This is Jeffrey Major from Canopy Claims Management, and this is a Write It Right Claims Estimating Series flood video, and it's related to foundation damage and hydrostatic pressure. NFIP pays for direct physical loss by or from flood, loss or damage to insured property directly caused by a flood, and they state there must be evidence of physical changes to the property. They do not insure for loss to property caused directly by earth movement, even if the earth movement is caused by flood. Some examples of earth movement that they do not cover are earthquake, landslide, land subsidence, sinkholes, destabilization, or movement of land that results from accumulation of water in subsurface land area or gradual erosion. What we have from meteorological event Sandy or Superstorm Sandy is not an earthquake, not a landslide, not land subsidence, although Sandy could cause land subsidence. It's not sinkholes, it's not gradual erosion, but can be destabilization of movement of land that results from accumulation of water or subsurface land area. So what we're going to show you in this video is where damages to foundations came from, specifically from Storm Sandy, and how they formed, what caused them, and basically show that the damages that we're explaining in this video are direct physical loss by flood and are not excluded in the exclusions. So let's begin. If you take a typical home construction of footings, a slab foundation with a basement and a sill plate or your joists in your home that sits on top of it, and that was here before any storm or anything like that. And basically what we did is we had storm water that came in. Keep in mind, this water did not come from the earth. It wasn't a inundated ground, or if it rained for 10 days straight and the ground just couldn't take water anymore and it exerted pressure from below. This was a storm surge. The water was in the ocean, and the winds, which caused the storm surge, pushed the water up on land, and it went across land, across the streets, across everywhere, and wrapped around your house, and then started filling your basements. Before it started filling your basements, the water was on the outside and not on the inside. Now this water, or your foundation that held water before, so you had a bunch of torrential downpours, or you had a bunch of damage where you never had water in your basement, now all of a sudden you're putting a lot of water pressure, and that's what our direct physical damage is. It's from direct pressure from water. So what you basically have in certain situations is you have basement walls that caved in. You have basement walls that cracked. The cracks could be big, they could be small, but what happens is there's pressure on the outside of the foundation that exceeds what the foundation can handle. Tiny cracks that were there before that may have been watertight are now exacerbated and now let water in, and they become bigger cracks. Now, FEMA, the NFIP flood program, they know this happens. This has been happening for years. What they did is, in new construction codes for communities that are participating in the NFIP program, they have changed the building codes to include these flood vents. So if anybody's rebuilding from Sandy after the fact, a new building, they have to put these flood vents in. And what happens is, if the flood vents were in place prior to Sandy, when the water, the surface water, surrounded the house, it would have filled the basement basically at the rate that it was surrounding the house, and there would be no extra pressure on the foundation. That's the purpose of these and breakaway walls and vents in this manner. So what happens is you have your outside water that starts to seep in the cracks, the new cracks or any openings, and now what happens is your basement fills with water. It equalizes with the water that's outside, and now you pretty much equalize the pressure. For the purpose of this video, I'm saying you equalize the pressure, but currents add additional pressure. But because there's water on the inside, it really doesn't put too much stress on a foundation. But what you have is a foundation that's already stressed from the pressure that was exerted on it before the basement filled with water. So as the ground inundates with water, everything's pretty much equal. Then what happens is the water on the outside goes down, but it's still high on the inside because there is no flood vents. There's no doors. There's no place for it to go out. Now what we have is pressure pushing on the outside walls. Keep in mind that 1 cubic foot of water exerts 64 pounds of pressure. So just imagine how much how much pressure water is putting on the foundation, pushing it out. So in this case, you have pressure pushing in, you had it neutralized, you have pressure pushing out. What's pushing it? What's pushing out? The water's pushing out on a foundation that's now already compromised. So that water goes down, everything goes down, and you're left with a damaged building. For homes that don't have basements, where you have foundations, another thing happens. It's not just pressure on a foundation wall, but when the water comes in, it exerts pressure on the actual components of the building. It exerts pressure on the siding, on the sheathing, on the framing. It exerts pressure on everything pushing in. On a house that's on pilings, what happens is the water comes in, it's exerting pressure. Same way. There's no water on the inside yet, so it's exerting pressure on everything. The action of the waves or the surge or the currents that are going through are all over the place, and they shake your foundation, they shake your house, and you wind up with, basically at the end of the day, an affected property. If you've ever stood in the ocean, and why do we grab our kids and we don't let them go in up to their waist in the ocean? It's because they'll get washed away. So if you've ever felt not waves, not a storm surge, but just stand in a foot of water in the ocean and feel the current coming in and out and what pressure that is, imagine an entire house. Your legs are not big in diameter. Imagine a whole wall with that pressure pushing on it. So you basically, your water goes down, and what you're left with is not reconsolidation of soil, not land subsidence, not erosion over, time, not settlement. You wind up with pilings and a house that's racked and shifted solely from water pressure. Now, going back to the water being high, when it goes down, it's still in the house. It hasn't come out yet. It went down on the outside faster than it went down on the inside. And now what you have, just like in the basement, is you have water pressure pushing out. So the water's high on the inside, it's low on the outside, and now you have pressure pushing out. Now I'm going to give you a close-up of that. The water goes down on the outside. You now have pressure pushing on the inside. It has to get out. So you have your framing, you have your sheathing and your siding, or multiple layers of old siding with new siding on top of it. Either way, the water has to get out. And it's thousands of pounds of pressure. So what happens is the water pushes and your siding gets pushed out. So this is an example of a building where you can see the post. The post is not level because you can see down at the bottom here that the pressure from water on the inside coming out of the house was so great that it pushed the siding, pushed the sheathing, pushed everything that's behind this wall out just so the water can get out. It actually moved the pole. This is the wall that we're looking at. It's hard to photograph these types of differences, but here's the wall at the top, near the top of the post, and lower where the wall is bowing out. And these are the level marks. You can see the bubble right in the center of level. So you have a level house above it, and then below you're out of level because it was pushing out. This is an example not of that house, but another house where you can see where the water line was about here, and you can see when the water was coming out that it pushed out. And this is the inside cavity of the wall. So there was sheathing, like a planking sheathing. There was tar paper. There was old tar shingles and insulation and siding. And basically all this got pushed out, and that's what came out of there. So what happens take a small bungalow, and let's say it's 20 feet by 48 feet, which is 960 square feet bungalow with 3 feet of water in it, amounts to 2,880 cubic feet of water. Times 64 pounds per cubic foot, you have 184,000 pounds of pressure on the inside of a building trying to push out. That's direct physical damage, not land subsidence, not any of the other things. It is just water. Imagine the hundreds of thousands of pounds of pressure pushing in on people's foundations, pushing on their pilings, and pushing on their basement walls. So that is the conclusion of the Write It Right estimating series, foundation damage, hydrostatic pressure. Thank you very much.